What's going on, y'all? This right here is going to be a good one for today. This is long format. We're going to pause a couple times. This right here is from Stuart and Cliff Needle, and it is Give Me an Answer. First of all, well, if you just want to learn something, I suggest that you subscribe. And you like the video. And I'm not saying mine, I'm saying theirs. But you can do that too for mine. This right here, this is the most viewed video that they have on their channel. We're gonna start off here and work our way down over the course of time. I may not be doing this every day. Maybe I might get into some other videos. And, not every one of my videos is gonna be about religion. But it seems to be a good talking point right now, and honestly, I am excited to learn. This right here has 1.9 million views. It's from 2 years ago. It's Give Me an Answer. All religions do not say the same thing. Jesus is different from the rest. We've got a group of people here, and let's start off.
Why can't there be multiple gods that we can believe in? And why can't there be multiple ways into heaven?
Good. There can be. But you see, what you've got to answer, ma'am, is why would you believe in heaven? Have you ever been there? Neither have I. So in light of the fact you've never seen heaven, why would you as a thinking human being believe there's a heaven?
I mean,
Why?
through the Christian faith, is there not the communication that if you do live by the faith, you get and you are forgiven, you go to heaven?
Yes. But ma'am, my being convinced that I'm going to heaven is based on one thing: the trustworthiness of Jesus Christ. Because I've never been to heaven. So I don't know if there's a heaven or not from my experience. And I can promise you, Austin is not heaven. Okay? It's a very nice place, but it's not heaven.
Right.
Okay? So you see, ma'am, when it comes to heaven, you're going to have to trust somebody the same way I'm going to have to trust somebody.
So that really does get down to it. At the end of the day, belief is belief. And no one can take your belief from you. Only you can. You either believe and you don't. You have to trust in Jesus Christ and in God. Man, I sound preachy right now. But that's the reality of it. If you don't believe, you don't believe. It's not your day. There's nothing wrong with that. We're not out here trying to hate on people for not believing what we believe in. We simply want to state the facts and the steps it takes to be where you're at.
And the question is, why do you trust whoever it is you trust? So because Muhammad contradicts Jesus, and because Jesus contradicts the avatars of Hinduism, and because the avatars of Hinduism contradict Siddhartha Gautama Buddha, and because they all contradict Baha'i faith, you've got to be on the intellectual level of a cockroach if you say they're all saying the same thing. They're not, ma'am. They're contradicting each other. So either they're all wrong or one of them's right. And now you got to study the Gospels for yourself, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and you got to ask yourself, does the evidence point to Jesus being the truth? And if it does, trust him. But if the evidence is that Christ is a liar, you'd be a fool to trust him. Do not trust Jesus if the evidence is he's a fraud, he's a hypocrite, he's a liar. Don't trust him.
And Cliff likes to get back to this time and time again. And the clips that I've seen of him, he gets back to the evidence. And I'm sure he's going to explain the evidence here. That really all comes down to it. We are curious individuals that want to learn about this. And in order to learn about this, we have to acknowledge that there are possibilities in this world of truth, falsehoods, hypocrites, and lies. And historical evidence that is just and historical evidence that we should bring to light. It's kind of a paradox. We have to do the math. We have to figure this stuff out. It takes a curious individual and it takes an open-minded individual to figure out what is going on. It's Continue.
But if the evidence is he's totally reliable, if the evidence is he really did die and rise from the dead, then you can trust him, and he's the one who promises heaven to everybody who puts their faith in him. A lot of my friends are atheist and agnostic, okay? And here's something that my atheist agnostic friends have to acknowledge if they're being intellectually consistent. Because they believe there's no heaven, no day of judgment, that has big implications for now, today. And the implication is what you and I do with our lives is ultimately meaningless. Why? Where are Hitler and Mother Teresa if there is no heaven?
Dead. If good people and bad people are just dead, a bad person that's suffering eternity or suffering in prison and they get the death sentence, it means nothing. Someone getting a death sentence in prison is ending their suffering. They're not going to hell anytime sooner. No, no, no. No, you're putting them out of their misery. That loneliness, that solitude in prison or wherever. And vice versa. For a good person to kill themselves to try to get to heaven faster, first of all, there's a couple denominations of Christianity that say that's a sin. Because you're murdering a life. You're killing or taking the life of another human being, which is a big no-no. And while it is yourself, still counts. Still means you're not such a good guy. Or girl. That's what he has to say.
And no hell. Where are Hitler and Mother Teresa? The same place. The fertilizer pit. They're decomposing. Which means, ultimately, it does not matter whether you are Adolf Hitler II or whether you're Mother Teresa II, because we're all going to the same place, the fertilizer pit.
And that gets back to the atheist and agnostic, right? That really does come down to the meaninglessness of it. There is nothing after death. Then the only thing you have is a book you wrote, a video you made, your friends that you made along the way, but they'll die too. Everything ends up being nothing. You've got 80 years of your life and poof. Gone. Done. Now the question is, do you even want to live your life that way? Do you want to live your life where at the age of 80, 85, 90, you're dead? About 100 years after your death, you wrote a book. A handful of people read it. It gets obscure and it's in some library somewhere. No one reads it anymore. It's been 100 years. Maybe made one YouTube video. Went over something like this. That's lost to the algorithm forever. It's got 138 views on it, and no one's ever going to watch it again. That right there, that's scary. That's a scary world to live in. It's just saying, you know what? None of it matters. We're all going to die. And when we die, that's it. We're just done. There's nothing after here. Just death. That's a pretty meaningless existence, and I don't plan on living in that world. Let's see here. Let's see if we can bump this up a little bit. That's sounding goofy.
You see, Jesus says, no, there is eternity out there, and there's a heaven and a hell, and there's a day of judgment, which means the decisions that you make today are really significant. They really matter. And you are really valuable, because God wants you to live for eternity with him in heaven. And becoming fertilizer is not God's plan for you.
Okay, so what he's trying to say, where I'm going to switch this back because that was really bad, is that you do have heaven or hell. And that provides meaning to you if you believe in God. That meaning is pretty substantial. It means that what you do here does matter. Because you don't have to just rely on the people that you spoke to in your life to continue on your legacy of what you had to say, your philosophy that you created, or some invention you made that no one's going to ever remember because an 8th grader's never studying for their history exam. No, what they're saying is that no matter what happens during your life, you do have meaning after death. You do have purpose over death. You do have eternity after death, whether that's in a good area or a bad area.
For you and desire for you. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you so much for raising that. Yes, sir.
There's been a couple issues with things that you've been saying that I have questions with, but I'm just going to do a quick short one. One of my main questions that I always have is just that, given what you touted earlier, a tri-omni God, a omnibenevolent, omnipotent, omniscient, just all-powerful, all-knowing, all-caring, how do you explain the existence of evil and suffering?
You bet. Very slowly, having to acknowledge I can't give you a complete answer. I do not know ultimately why God allowed evil, suffering, and death. But here's my first point. If you're an atheist or if you're an agnostic, what is your solution to the problem of evil and death?
My solution to the evil problem?
The solution. What is your solution to the problem of evil and death? If you're an atheist, if you're an agnostic.
I mean, the solution for everybody is just to be as good as possible. I mean, everybody should aim for being good.
True, according to their own definition of good, right?
Becoming, own definition good, whether it's objective good from God or objective good from another source.
Well, remember, the atheist or agnostic says either there is no God or I don't know whether there's a God.
Yeah.
So good is not defined by God if you're an atheist.
Yeah.
If you're an atheist, good is defined by your culture or by the power elite or by yourself or by majority opinion.
It could be just defined as good, good just exists, whether God or not.
How can good just exist?
So that brings up a good point. How can good exist without God? And he's completely right with his question. Is that you do not get to determine how good you are versus someone else, your significance and importance over someone else, or, okay, well, this person has to die to save this person over here, and, well, that guy, he's not so good. He murdered 3 people, so we're gonna electrocute him to death. And that person over there, they ran a stoplight, and they caused a collision where 2 people died, so they need to get the death penalty, and this guy was drunk driving, so, he should get waterboarded or something. That's crazy. You don't get to judge people, and you don't have judgment, and you don't have objective truth and objective good, objective bad. These things are ever changing. Remember, we always thought that slavery was cool. We thought that women didn't get to vote. That was fine. And gay people didn't get to get married if they wanted to. We've changed that. But that doesn't mean that that's objective good. That means that that probably was already there, and we just decided that that was objectively good now. But what if there's a standard that's way up here? Am I still in the camera? Yeah. What if there's a standard that's always been here, and humanity's down here, and we've slowly been inching towards it, but we're not there yet. We are not there yet. We are not good yet, and we might never ever be. We might stay right here. We'll never be perfect. We'll never be objectively good, and we'll never have a good definition of good either. We'll always stay here. We'll never hit here. This is reserved for God only. I think that's at least my point.
Good could possibly, because I don't know if there's a God or not. But I mean, if there is such a thing as a God that is out of time, like that is eternal, why can't other concepts like good just be out of time and eternal, just a thing that exists like God?
Okay. Sir, good is an intangible value. You cannot see good.
You can't see God either.
Exactly. You cannot measure good, right?
You can't measure God. It could exist eternally, just like it could just be God. It could just be God, it could not be just God. It could just be the existence of good and evil that just exists in the world. But given a tri-omni God who's all-powerful and all-caring, why evil and suffering exists doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, good. You hang with me and we'll go.
He's as powerful and caring as he says.
In order to understand goodness, there has to be a mind. This tree has no understanding of good. This cement has no understanding of good. See, good can't just exist. Because goodness requires definition, and it's an intangible value that you can't measure. You can't grab goodness, which means you got to have a mind involved in defining what is good.
If we're going by that definition, then what is defining God?
Okay,
what
we'll
created
get to that.
God?
God isn't defined. He's all-knowing. He was never born. There was no creation of God. God has just been there. So he created us with his mind, and then he decided that we're kind of smart too. Not as smart as him, not as intelligent as him, but pretty decent. We can make good decisions. I lost my train of thought.
We'll get to that.
All the arguments you could give for God could also go for good. Just in a...
Oh, okay. So we're talking about good, right? So in order to be good, you have to be all-knowing. And in order for us to have a definition of good, it's impossible. It really is. Because no one is perfect. We can all acknowledge that. I don't care how narcissistic you are, you cannot say that you are a perfect human being. There are some things about you that are wrong. There's some ways that you treat others that are wrong. And there's some ways that you live your life that are inherently wrong. We just don't know them. And we don't have a good definition because everyone's different. If everyone was perfect, we'd all be robots. Well, that's not exactly good because that's not free will. And without free will, you have nothing. So we have to have free will, but with free will, we'll never be 100% good. We have to have the choice to be good. And that's the value in it.
No.
General concept. It could just exist eternally out of time, unmeasurable.
No, sir. That's not fair. If God exists, God doesn't depend on anybody. If goodness as an intangible value exists, it depends on a mind to define it.
God would also be an intangible.
Obviously, that's right.
It could, like, coming from a different viewpoint, outside of trying to see where, the reasoning for things, you could say that it could be what we define as God, societally, could just be the existence of just that good.
Alright, this guy's cool. Let's move on. They're just going around in circles. We gotta find somebody new.
Crushed to death by a lion. Like,
Good.
How is that caring or just? Like, coming from a Christian standpoint, we have sinned as humans. Coming from the Christian standpoint, so we are, we have free will and we can make mistakes and all that.
Yep.
But why not? Why have animals just, not have their perfect little ecosystem where nothing has to suffer and only humans suffer?
Very good. Now we're thinking, all right? So, Genesis chapters 1 and 2. God creates a good world. God created this and God saw that it was good. God created that and God saw that it was good. God created this and God sees that it's good. So when God created, he did a good job. No evil. But Genesis chapter 3 records how human beings rebel against God. And one of the consequences of human beings telling God, get lost, get out of here, is God honors our free will, takes a step back from planet Earth, and nature unravels. And so you're absolutely correct, sir. Animals suffer. I have suffered. We all will suffer.
that does make a good point. Is at one point, it's not your fault, but it's somebody's. It's all of our faults. Is that if we stray away from God, that it's not that he hates us, he just goes, you have free will, I'm stepping back. That makes a lot of sense to me. And it should to you too. So, all the suffering in the world can be attributed to our own mistakes. And that makes a good point because it says, hey, you need to be humble. You need to understand that you are not a perfect individual and that you need to repent for the mistakes that you have created, no matter how small. So even if you don't believe in God, on the other side here you have a really good point. A good point about being humble. Very powerful.
Not because God is sicking us, but because God created a world with free will, people with free will. We chose him to tell him to get out. When he gets out, chaos fills the gap. Genetic breakdown, death occur.
Because humans decided to reject God, God punished the animals.
One of the consequences.
It seems uncaring and unjust.
No.
Given a triomni God.
No, it's an issue of consequences. Who put Texas State together? Did they do it last summer?
Well, the consequence should go to the humans that did it. You don't punish someone else for somebody else's misdoing.
That would be a nice way for things to happen. But unfortunately, because I have free will, if you're a husband and I smack you around, it might affect how you treat your wife when you go home tonight. It might affect how you treat your kids when you go home tonight. You see, for me to think that, well, I've got free will and it's just me and it's just you, and there are no consequences to the way I exercise my free will, that's a lie. Total lie.
Well, how I would interact with animals is one thing, but
that brings up another point. You do not get to blame God and use God as a shield because he gave you free will. So I use that free will to beat somebody up. No, 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 no. Your free will is your free will. You made a mistake, you screwed someone over, and you hurt someone. That is on you. Again, that gets back to accountability. Right? You have to be accountable for your actions. You don't get to blame God on it. You don't get to blame higher power, a government, a friend, a coworker, or a family member. You know, if you were abused as a child, you don't get to blame that abuse on the way that you abuse others now. All of those things. You don't get to blame others for the actions that you do. Only you can blame yourself for your own actions.
About how animals should interact with each other. Why suffering exists between animals, not from humans to animals, but between animals, suffering exists. Why are they being punished for suffering between themselves?
They're not being
punished. If they didn't do
punished.
anything wrong.
You're correct. You're absolutely correct. They didn't do anything wrong. The same way, little babies that I have to bury didn't do anything wrong. But they're born into an unfair world where birth defects occur, and so babies die. Not because they've done something wrong. They have not done anything wrong. But they are born into an unfair, unjust, messed up world. Thanks for raising those issues. Yes, ma'am.
They're also born with original sin, though. Which
okay, what does that mean? My good Catholic friend, what does that mean?
It means as a consequence of, correct me if I'm wrong, but as a consequence of Adam and Eve eating the apple, all the following children would be born with this original sin that would...
Can we just talk about the Catholic girl with the cross on her neck? Has Chipotle in her hand? Oh, God. Alright, come on, that's hilarious, right? Chick-fil-A, the Christian spot? That's how you recognize a Catholic. They got Chick-fil-A in their hand. Little addicts. My pleasure. I worked at Chick-fil-A.
Have been an effect of mankind previously, correct?
Okay. Maybe.
And at least also the way I was brought up was that if you were not baptized or had your original sin reversed, you would not be able to make it to heaven.
Yeah,
So
I totally
isn't
disagree with that. I don't think there's any biblical basis for that.
Catholics. I'm sorry. My mom was Catholic. She spoke to me about these things, and part of the Catholic thing is very traditional. They haven't changed much. They haven't changed at all, honestly. And they've been very strict with their rules, and one of them is this whole baptism thing. Uh, like a baby doesn't get into heaven because it wasn't baptized yet. I mean, dang, some babies are a couple months old and okay, now it's time to get the baptism. Oh, my baby died. Well, they're going to hell. That's crazy. Come on, Catholics. We got to be a little bit smarter than that. You're saying that if the parent just forgets to get baptized, maybe they don't have time. Maybe the baby's in the hospital for the first year of its life and it can't get baptized, so you're gonna die and you're gonna go to hell. That's crazy work. And that's not to her, that's not at her, that's at Catholics. My mom talked about how Catholics can be a little bit sometimes, And the other part is the whole Adam and Eve thing. Story of Adam and Eve with the whole remove the rib from Adam and make Eve out of it. And here you go. That's your Eve. I'm gonna be real. That's a little sexist of a story. However, the times were different. The times have changed now. The Adam and Eve story has less power than it used to because we've given more power to women. Not we, oh my god, I sound terrible. The point is that times have changed and that book might be a little outdated. We shouldn't change the book, we should keep it the way it is. We should acknowledge that the book was old. And there was definitely some different ideas going around back then with the whole Adam and Eve thing. Whether or not it was true, do we need to start reverting back and say, hey, dude, girl, if you eat a Granny Smith apple right now, I'm a sucker punch you. Come on, man. All right, let's not get into that. Don't be bringing me no apples of knowledge. Green apple. Fucking nothing like that.
But wouldn't original sin be a spiritual birth defect?
Good. Ooh, now I think we're onto something here. Okay, so what on earth is original sin? Original sin is simply this. I am born with a readiness to sin factor. Doesn't mean that everything I do is evil. My atheist friends do a lot of good. They've got a conscience. But all of us have sinned. Every atheist, every agnostic, every Christian, Jew, Buddhist, Hindu, we all have sinned. Part of the reason we have sinned is because we're born with a readiness to sin factor. Let me give you an example. When I was 4 years old, I was in a sandbox playing, and my friend had the audacity to hurt me. So very naturally, I took up the metal truck, and I said, really? Bam. Never seen that behavior model before, but I very naturally took up the metal truck, slammed it on my playmate's head, and it wasn't pretty. I am a sinner. That's my son over there, walking this way. He used to sit on a baby chair. I would put a glass of grape juice in front of him, and I would say, Stuart, do not knock this glass of grape juice off this tray. And with a smile from this ear to this ear, he would backhand that glass of grape juice off the tray. He was born a sinner, same way as old man, me, was born a sinner.
He sinned for knocking over the grape juice? I mean, fair point. He disobeyed authority and also taking up arms. It wasn't self-defense, right? Because he hit the guy with the little metal truck. That's not self-defense at that point. That's just straight up retribution. Hardcore type stuff. Just whack. So we all inherently know, hey, I mean, it's justified, we think, but at the end of the day, it's not good. It doesn't make you a good person that you did that. It's funny to have a kid knock over some juice after dad told him not to. But yes, why'd you do that, man? Come on, man.
Now, what does that mean? It means we have a readiness to sin factor. But we cannot blame our sinful nature for what we do, because we still have.
That's the other part. We all inherently have something wrong with us, and we can always act on a bad. Our ability to control our actions means everything. There's a reason that we have been around for this long. We know how to control ourselves. We're not sick animals. We have thoughts and consciousness, and the ability to discern from good and evil relatively so-ish, kinda. A lot of people are screwed up, but for the most part, we all kind of understand a little bit.
Have a free will.
The question is, did religion create society or did society create religion? You see what I mean? Did Christians say, hey guys, murdering isn't that cool after the Crusades? And then everyone continued on and said, hey, I'm not Christian, but they said murdering isn't cool. I kind of agree with that. Or did society say, hey, murdering isn't cool? And the Christians said, yes, that's a sin. It's like, okay, bro, we already knew that. You see what I mean? There's two possibilities there. Who knows what came first? Anyways, it's getting kind of late. I'm gonna have to cut this off here, but we'll definitely continue some more tomorrow. I might hop on a little Helldivers, I don't know. Maybe a match or two just for fun. Anyways, I'll catch you later. See ya.